But the United States didn't want to go and get such too bad a reputation internationally. So they didn't use, we think, at least we think, they didn't use, for instance, electroshock therapy to the genitals or to the mouth, where, as you know from getting dentistry, talking about the mouth here, I hope your dentist doesn't apply their dental tools elsewhere on your body except the mouth. um, but you know that basically this is where all the nerve endings are. There's thousands of freaking nerve endings in your mouth, very sensitive, and in your genitals. So this is a good place to shock people with electroshock if you want to get them to speak, to talk. Or other physically damaging tortures which can be inflicted on people using very basic stuff, and I was talking about this before, which you see in with the butcher in American Sniper: pliers, hammers, basic power tools, chisels, and so on. Okay, what they settled on that they decided they would call enhanced interrogation techniques, which, as far as we're concerned, is called torture, would be the following. And so I have some pictures of these things. So I will show them to you and narrate them. Yes. Okay. So one of the things that happened was that the army. So I've got a slide here, ironically, which has an ad for World of Tanks, which is a video game, and you could play for free. From the LA Times, was that the Army manual left out the Geneva detainee the rule, right? So basically it omits the detainee policies of key tenets, humiliating, degrading treatment, which means that basically you can... So if you just leave that out of Geneva, people are like, but we are following Geneva. You're like, yeah, but you're missing this particular line. People are like, oh well. I just work here, Paul. I'm just a soldier. Like, I just do what I'm told. This is they tell me to bring these people out, I bring them out. Somebody else interrogates them. Remember that interrogate here means question. It doesn't mean hold down and torture necessarily. Increasingly, interrogate is going to come to mean hold down and torture. And remember that, if you see a film about the Nazis, it's always about, how terrible the tortures are, and the same thing with the Soviet gulags. And, there's always somebody who's the Chinese, how terrible their tortures, their human records, their human rights records are terrible. Sure, they are. Yeah, sure. But remember also, two wrongs don't make a right, right? So that's a fallacy. So here are some of the following. Stress positions, which includes short shackling and forced kneeling positions. Short shackling means that you, I don't know if I've got a picture of this. I don't think I do, but you put shackles around somebody's wrists, like handcuffs, and then you chain them to a ring in the floor, and the ring is set in the floor. It's set in concrete, and you leave them there, and that's it. So basically, you don't let them lie down. So you have guards who come along and make sure that people kneel and or stand up on them. They're on their feet, so they're bent over and they're shackled to a ring in the floor, and that's it. They're stuck, and they keep that up. Basically, because you keep coming and waking them up and pointing a gun in their backs and, digging in their backs with your gun and saying, get up, get up. And you do that for 8, 10, 12 hours, 24 hours. Okay. Sleep deprivation, which means you leave the lights on, and you may play very loud music. I mean very loud music. So people are like, oh, cool, what's like a rave? It's like, yeah, if your culture is to listen to death metal, which I used, for 24 hours at 80 to 100 decibels, that's great, But remember, no drugs, no water, because all these things are kept back from you. So what you get to do is you have headphones on, and they're playing death metal at 100 decibels into your ears. You've got a mask on, blacked in goggles. You might have a hood over your head as well, So basically, you've got nothing in your head except this screaming music. And okay, so that's different kind of deafeningly loud noise. Severe temperature changes, so you drop the temperature in a cell to, let's say, it's the winter, just turn off the heat. And the winters in Iraq are cold. Temperature goes down to, let's say, 15 degrees, and you're naked. So that's fine. And then if you want to make it worse, you just come and throw a bucket of water on the person every 5 hours and let them shiver. You take everything out of the cell, so the cell is just a concrete cell and no heat, and you get wet, and okay. So that's the kind of thing which dropped people's. They did tests, as I say, they did tests of this in Britain, and people began to die of hypothermia very quickly. Within a few days, they had doctors monitoring this test because they had people volunteer for essentially what was this called enhanced interrogation techniques, and to see whether or not they were like, oh, it's not that bad. So people volunteered, people who were both pro-peace and pro-war. And the people who were pro-peace came out of it going, that was the worst. I'm not sure I'm going to recover from that, and needed a lot of therapy. The people who were pro-war, very, very few of them came out saying, I believe that's a good idea. They were like, what are we doing? This is terrible. And some of them nearly died. I mean, they had people whose temperatures dropped, and the doctors were like, that's it, this person's going to die. If you don't stop this, and the person's like, no, I want to go on. They're like, no, you're going to die. Not on our watch. Not for a television program. We're stopping that. What a concept. Public shaming, nudity, which I will show you pictures of. So I'm showing you the short shackling. Building these stacks of men in the prisons, and then having them looked over by female guards, of whom there were some, because the military police were tasked with the job of being guards, prison guards. And they were overseen by a female general, Janice Karpinski. And Karpinski was kind of basically thrown under the wheels of the treads of the Abram, and she got flattened. That was another whole thing that happened. I think I have an example of this. Yeah, okay, so forcing the men to masturbate, and sort of simulating sex between men, and then having that seen by women. So I'm showing you pictures here from Abu Ghraib. This is the big scandal that broke. In the one case, we've got the guy who's shackled to a bed frame, and he has underwear on his head. He was told that the underwear had menstrual blood on it, and then it was put on his head. Now, in Iraq, well, in many cultures, Muslim, Christian, menstrual blood is for some reason seen by men as being a serious problem. It's their problem, but it's still a serious one, especially if they basically penalize women for having menstrual blood. Oh my God! Oh, not that. So in this case, what you've got is you tell this guy this is menstrual blood. You put this thing on his head, and he can't get it off. In Muslim culture, in this case in Arabic-speaking culture, this is haram. It's seriously haram. It's forbidden. In fact, it's unclean as far as the men are concerned. So this is torture, because basically it's kind of like submerging somebody in water and then telling people that they're submerged in urine, that kind of thing. It's like, this is not going to make you feel that happy. Then you make them drink it. They're like, okay, so it's like, at what point here do we go from I don't feel very well to I feel sick? Sex between men, piles of humans, dog scaring tactics. Yep, I've got that, where they brought the dogs out and they used, because these canine units are extremely, the dog and the handler train together, and it's a very, very tight relationship. So tight that, in fact, that if a dog gets killed, they often they just put the handler out. They're like, okay, you're discharged, because the handler just may not survive may not go on being functional on the battlefield without the dog. May not be possible. So you use a dog to apparently attack somebody. So you've got somebody who's chained up, and then you use the dog and you say attack, attack. And the dog starts barking, and then you pull the dog back. So you don't let the dog attack the person, but you just keep saying attack, attack. Okay, so that's going to be terrifying. And finally, waterboarding. And waterboarding is this process of covering the person's face with something which is going to keep the water. So a thick absorbent towel, for instance, or some rags, but something which is going to keep the water in it. And then you simply pour water, you put the person in a downward, their head is down, you'll see it here, so that the gravity is against them, basically. You cover their heads completely with this, say, towels, and then you pour buckets of water on them, and you keep pouring. And what it does is, this is a technique that comes from a long time ago. The Japanese used it in World War II, and remember, everybody's like, oh, the Japanese, they tortured us. So we called it torture in World War II. You pour the water on the person, and basically the body starts to believe after a very short amount of time, because you can't get a breath, that it's going to drown. So it starts to have convulsions and so on. Now, in fact, the body is getting just enough air to breathe. So you're not probably actually going to drown. You're going to cough a lot, but you're not actually going to drown. But you're fooling the body into believing that it is drowning. So you might have a heart attack. You might just be terrified to death. So you start having full body panics. And that's waterboarding, right? Now, I'm showing you a picture here from 1901, which is an early version of waterboarding, which the Marines did in the Philippines. Okay, and the thing is that when you waterboard somebody long enough, you're just going to sort of burn them out.